Star Trek has always been one of the strangest shows on primetime television. Beginning as a horror anthology masquerading as a space opera, it has evolved over the years, eventually morphing into the science fiction, action-adventure dramedy we know today. However, nothing on the show can compare to the wild, wacky, and frankly insane theories that die-hard Trekkies have invented over the years. Star Trek basically invented fandoms as we know them today, and no multimedia franchise has more devoted devotees. As such, Trekkies have a tendency to analyse every single piece of Star Trek media they can get their hands on, often even going as far as to create their own. That's right, with over 55 years, 13 movies, 12 TV shows, 42 seasons, and 850 episodes at our disposal, our Star Trek fanatics still aren't satiated. Our need to explore this universe we love can often lead us to invent our own stories, characters, and bizarre theories. Now, as some of you may know, we have covered this topic before in a video, so be sure to check that video out, which will be linked in the description below. But today, we present to you some more of those weirder theories out there. While none have ever been confirmed, all have puzzled, delighted, and even enraged fans who think about them. So with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with Trek Culture here with the 10 most insane Star Trek theories. Number 10. Enterprise was all a holodeck simulation. Enterprise is often seen as the black sheep of the Star Trek family, with many fans wishing it had never happened at all. This theory should delight those fans no end, as it posits maybe it didn't. The final moments of Enterprise's final episode show us Next Generation's William Riker, who has been observing the events of the episode on the holodeck. This begs the question, if this episode was simply a holographic simulation, how do we know every episode wasn't also a holographic simulation? After all, Riker must have some downtime between dealing with the meddlesome Q and defending Starfleet from the Borg. Maybe, like all of us, he likes nothing more than to sit down and watch an episode or two of his favourite show. Unlike most of us though, his favourite show is Star Trek Enterprise. We're not saying that Captain Archer and co never existed, rather that the show we watched was a holographic dramatisation of Archer's 200-year-old logs. It would certainly explain a lot of the aesthetic anomalies and continuity errors that plagued the show. Plus, it's nice to know that the entire time we were watching Enterprise, good old William Riker was right beside us watching along. Number 9. We live in the mirror universe. Star Trek has always been a hopelessly optimistic show, teaching its viewers that humanity can be a force of good, spreading peace and good vibes throughout the galaxy. Unfortunately, humanity doesn't always listen. This leads us to a particularly pessimistic theory. The Prime Universe, as seen in the majority of all Star Trek media, is not our own universe. Rather, we all live in the dark, dreary, and ultimately evil mirror universe. The Prime Universe shows humans as a flawed but ultimately benevolent species. Unfortunately, if you look at our history or current worldwide events, you discover that as a culture we are much more similar to the humans of the mirror universe. After all, we are supremely territorial with a vast history of colonization, oppression, and even human enslavement. We have armed ourselves with enough weapons to self-destruct our planet many times over and have come dangerously close to doing it. If we did survive a Third World War and were then visited by aliens, can you really see humanity uniting peacefully with intergalactic strangers? It's much more likely that we would view the visitors as conquerors and attempt to destroy them before they destroyed us. In Star Trek's mirror universe, the Terran Empire of Earth chose to exploit rather than explore the depths of outer space. It's not crazy to imagine humans as we know them doing the same. Perhaps this is why it's called the mirror universe. Mirrors don't typically show you the polar opposite of reality, but reflect reality as it actually is. Number 8. Discovery Season 2 didn't happen. If that last theory bummed you out, well, here's one that might cheer up certain members of the Star Trek fanbase. The events of Discovery Season 2 never happened. While Discovery has been well received, there are chunks of the fandom who have more than a few problems with it. Not only does it retcon a lot of the original series, it also completes Star Trek's evolution from a gentle episodic sci-fi show to a loud action-adventure series, replacing one-and-done stories with series-long arcs. Whether this is a bad thing or not is totally up for debate, but so is whether or not any of it actually happened. This theory dates back to the original pilot for Star Trek, which went unaired for decades but still remains canon. The episode sees Captain Christopher Pike trapped in an alien zoo, committed to using mind control to give him the illusion of a perfect life. We eventually see him escape the zoo, but what if this too is just an illusion? After all, it would be the perfect way for his alien captors to convince him he'd won. This would mean that all of his future appearances, including pretty much all of Discovery Season 2, actually took place inside the mind of the captured Pike. After all, the original Pike was angry, quite unfriendly, and altogether fed up with being a Starfleet captain. This new Pike is charming, fun-loving, and generally beloved and respected by all, exactly how a man might imagine himself inside his own fantasy. Number 7. The transporter kills anyone who uses it. This remains one of the most enduring and existential Trek theories of all time. So let's delve in. How exactly do Star Trek's transporters work? Well, the official explanation is that they convert a subject's constituent matter into energy, beam that energy to another destination, then reassemble it in its original form. Pretty simple, right? Wrong. Very, very wrong. While this technology seems impossible enough as it is, many argue that even if it existed, it would be especially impossible to convert a person's matter into energy without killing them. This theory posits that every time a person is transported, they are destroyed, and a perfect clone is created in their place. This clone doesn't even realize it's a clone, as it's perfectly made and has all the memories of the original person implanted. This may explain why some characters, such as Bones, are famously afraid of using the transporter, worried that having their atoms scattered everywhere just can't be healthy. This raises an interesting philosophical question, however. Even if this is the case, does it matter? If the clone is exactly the same as you and contains all of your memories, then what's to stop it from being the true you? After all, every cell in a human's body is completely replaced on a continuous 7-year cycle. The body you inhabit now doesn't contain any of the same cells or materials it did 7 years ago, but you're still the true you, aren't you? Number 6. Angela Martine had a death wish. Shore Leave is quite the revealing episode of Star Trek the original series. As the crew of the Enterprise holiday on a mysterious planet, they have no idea that they are actually visiting a highly advanced amusement park designed to let visitors experience their deepest desires. These desires tell us a lot about the individual crew members. Some are innocent enough. Yeoman Barrows just wants to live the life of a princess. Others are more insidious. Bones wants to spend some quality time with 2 cabaret chorus girls, while Kirk desires nothing more than to beat up an Irishman. Crew member Angela Martine, on the other hand, may have had the most upsetting desire of all. Throughout the episode, we see both Bones and Martine seemingly die. Bones is jousted to death by a medieval knight, while Martine is gunned down by a Japanese fighter aircraft. The episode ends with Bones reappearing, explaining that he has been healed by the mysterious aliens running the amusement park. However, Martine does not receive a similar scene, and we are left unsure as to whether she survived or not. As upsetting as it is, one theory suggests that Martine's deepest desire was to not be brought back to life, and the amusement park honoured her wishes. Unfortunately, this actually adds up. She never appears in the series again after this, and the only previous episode she appeared in was focused on the death of her fiancé on their wedding day. The worst part? Nobody seems to realise she's missing, not even the writers apparently. Number 5. Spock was designed to cause outrage. Mr. Spock is one of the most beloved figures in science fiction. His iconic ears, eyebrows, and bowl cut are instantly recognisable. It's almost as if he was designed to purposely be a fan favourite science fiction character. However, many people suspect that Gene Roddenberry actually had much different intentions when designing Enterprise's number 1. Although we would never associate the two today, many people at the time suspected that Spock was supposed to resemble Satan. This caused a lot of outrage from concerned parents at the time who didn't want their kids to watch a show made by satanic worshippers. Roddenberry only added fuel to the fire by admitting that the similarities were not accidental. In the second episode ever aired, Uhura sings a song that directly compares the two, with the lyrics saying, "Oh, on the Starship Enterprise, there's someone who's in Satan's guise, whose devil ears and devil eyes could rip your heart from you." There's also the fact that Roddenberry originally wanted Spock to be a Martian with red skin, which would have made the similarities even more obvious. But why would Roddenberry do this? Why would he purposely cause outrage and controversy around his dream project? Well, the answer is in the ask. He probably wanted to cause outrage and controversy around his dream project. As the old adage goes, there's no such thing as bad publicity. The more that people spoke about the show, the more it was cemented as a pop culture phenomenon. Many people probably tuned in expecting outrage, but stayed when they discovered a thoughtful, progressive, hopeful show. It was basically the 1960s equivalent of a clickbait article saying something purposely controversial about a beloved franchise just to get more comments and clicks. Number 4. Spock and Kirk are lovers. This one isn't so much a theory, as it is 100% confirmed by Gene Roddenberry. Star Trek has always been set in an idyllic future society, one in which diversity and inclusion are important values. However, until recently, viewers have seen very little diversity in terms of sexuality. For a good 21 years, the only sexuality on show was Kirk attempting to make out with every every woman he met. As it turns out, there is a bit more to Kirk's sexuality than awkwardly mashing his face against female guest stars. To the delight of countless fans and shippers the world over, Roddenberry confirmed that over the many years they adventured together, Kirk and Spock's relationship developed into something a lot more than co-workers. They were soulmates. There are countless instances of the two showing intimacy beyond friendship towards each other. For example, in Star Trek III, Kirk's own son dies protecting Spock. Although he is naturally upset, Kirk is more relieved that he didn't lose Spock, saying, "The cost would have been my soul." Gene Roddenberry created a Vulcan word to describe Kirk and Spock's close relationship: Thyla. This is all the proof we need, seeing as it translates in English to friend, brother, lover. Of course, it would have been amazing to actually see this side of their relationship explicitly play out on screen. Unfortunately, the censors at CBS just didn't think the people of the 60s were ready for that, but their kids were gonna love it. Number 3. Star Trek the original series is an in-universe TV show. The original series of Star Trek has in many ways aged like a fine wine, albeit a fine wine stored in a cheap wooden box that somebody glued some flashing lights to. As classic as the sets and costumes are, they look less 23rd century chic and more like something cobbled together from the leftover materials of an underfunded theatre's Christmas panto. While we can all suspend our disbelief to a certain extent, higher budget prequel series like Enterprise and Discovery make the original series' low-tech aesthetic impossible to ignore. It's a similar criticism that's often aimed at the Star Wars prequels. Why do shows set between 10 and 100 years earlier look so much more futuristic? One popular theory is that the original series is not showing us the actual events of the USS Enterprise, but a group of actors within the world of Star Trek reenacting the real Captain Kirk's logs. This would explain why everyone in the wider world knows about Kirk and Co.'s exploits, yet the original series looks so different to everything that came after The Next Generation. Starfleet members are naturally big fans of this low-budget show about an accident-prone Federation crew. Some fans even extend this theory to every show and movie set within the universe, claiming that nothing we are seeing is real and every show is just actors performing dramatizations of the real Federation ship's logs. You know, if you simply replace the words "the real Federation ship's logs" with fictional scripts, these theorists could actually really be onto something. Number 2. God is dead and Starfleet killed him. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, contains a lot of catharsis for anyone who has a difficult relationship with religion, seeing as Spock literally kills God in it. Well, he kills a being who was pretending to be Shaka-Ri, a Vulcan god, but who was that being? One theory argues that it actually was the petulant and self-righteous god of the Old Testament, years after he had been dismissed and forgotten by his worshippers on Earth. After all, that particular god was pretty prone to huge outbursts of apocalyptic anger and wasn't exactly forgiving towards people he deemed to be sinners. He also had a habit to prank his followers in pretty vicious ways. I mean, who could forget the time he told his most loyal subject, Abraham, to murder his son before revealing that he was just joking at the very last second? After losing his believers to the ways of the New Testament and the rise of science and the human independence from religion, perhaps this was cranky old God pulling off one last epic prank before his power finally faded. Say what you will about him, but he certainly went out with style. Number 1. Benny Russell created Star Trek. The Old Testament God is not the only godlike being we meet throughout Star Trek. There's also Trelane of Gothos, the Red Angel, Gary Mitchell, and most famously of all, Q. However, if you're looking for the ultimate and definitive creator of the Star Trek universe, you may not need to look any further than Benny Russell. Who is Benny Russell? Why, a science fiction writer living in 1950s New York, of course. His potential godhood comes into play when, in the Deep Space Nine episode Far Beyond the Stars, Captain Sisko takes his identity on during a vision from the prophets. Russell spends most of his time trying to convince his racist publishers to run his story about a certain black Starfleet captain running a certain space station in a certain area of deep space. He doesn't succeed in getting his story published, but it seems that he does succeed in literally bringing his story to life. The next time we see Russell in the episode Shadows and Symbols, he's ended up in a mental institution. He's still kept up with writing his science fiction stories, albeit on the walls of his cell rather than a typewriter. Meanwhile, in the future, Captain Sisko inexplicably can't open a powerful prophet artifact he discovered. However, as soon as Russell writes so in his story, it miraculously opens. It seems the events of Deep Space Nine only take place once Russell writes them down, down. If this is the case with Deep Space Nine, then there's no reason it wouldn't be the case for the entire Star Trek universe. All hail Benny Russell. And that concludes our list. If you can think of any that we missed, then do let us know in the comments below, but also remember to check out our other video covering fan theories. Also remember to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell, and head over to Twitter and follow us there at Trek Culture. I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild, and I've been Ellie with Trek Culture. I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember to boldly go where no one has gone before.